Oh, cool.
There we go. Well, hi everybody. This is Dr. Jen, and I'm here with Alexa tonight. And Alexa, so happy we are doing this together.
Yes, me too. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. And Alexa, I wonder if you can let people know a little bit about who you are. I know sometimes we have people from different places, and
Okay.
so maybe you can share where you're from, a little bit the work you do, and maybe something about how we know each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, my name is Alexa Brunei. I was born in Miami, Florida. So I'm born and raised in Miami, but when I was about 18, I left and started doing my own thing from university into grad school into writing. So now I'm doing something that's pretty unrelated to all of those things. I'm actually working at a startup, and it's in the food and beverage business. So the irony is still not lost on me there. And of course, I was blessed to meet Dr. Jen at the start of FAB, which is now a little over 2 years ago. No?
Wow, yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
Easy.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Alexa, I'll just tell you, what came to mind is I remember when we first met and we started doing some work together. I remember thinking, I have to be on my toes in the sessions with you because you were so like your mind was so expansive. And you
The
remember what to
overthinking.
say, like sometimes I feel like we're on like an 8 lane highway and
Mhm.
we're like changing lanes and I had to like really pay attention and and then over time it was like, oh, we're not on that 8 lane highway anymore. It really, right? It like started things started to change and
Yeah.
have slowed down and we were driving the speed limit. Uh, but you remember that metaphor we used to use a lot together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was definitely my marker for, I mean, I thought it was so interesting first just being exposed to this kind of language because realistically, like it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to any kind of like therapeutic language, let alone like ED focused language. And I just found it funny because I could then kind of gauge my presence by really the speed of my thoughts because I was always accustomed to, the overthinking
Mhm.
and whatnot. So the 8 lane highway just got a little bit more organized. Still,
Yeah.
still, still multiple lanes.
Well, and here's the thing. I think you're going to be the kind of person you're always probably going to have like a lot going on and a lot of
Yeah.
things going
Yeah.
on. And
Ideally, hopefully.
say it again.
Yeah, hopefully, like that'd be great.
Yeah. And, you know, I think the other thing that comes to mind is, I say this to people a lot. Like, we do try to give kind of like some kind of roadmap during recovery, right? But it is a roadmap that is really tailored to each person because different things work for different people. Like, I never said that metaphor to anybody else, Alexa, ever. It was like something new that
Yeah,
came
yeah.
out of our conversations and our dialoguing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my question is like, what were some of those things that started to make a big difference for you? Like, because there was, like you said, oh, whoa, like there was this mindfulness, like, do I want to be on the 8 lane highway? Do I want to be going this fast? Do I
I
want
want
to
to chill.
turn off and, be on the 4 lane or the
Yeah.
2 lane or, like you started really having more choice. And look, for all of us, that takes some time. But, I wonder if there are other people who are listening who are like, whoa, I have that 8 lane highway. I can, be thinking and overthinking things or going in lots of different directions. I can relate to that myself sometimes, right? For sure.
Yeah.
But what were some of those things that really started having you go, okay, I'm starting to get these different skills with my driving, with my recovery, that really started to have things go different for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously a loaded question, but a great one. I think you
I know
know,
I'm putting you totally
the
on the spot with
no, no,
this
no, no.
one.
This is this is great. I was gonna honestly use an analogy. It's because when I was young in college, I don't okay, where I come from, right? There's not a lot of like language around mental health rhetoric. There's not any language really around any kind of mental illnesses or just general mental afflictions. And I, of course, had a few of them that I discovered in my early 20s and then on. And that discovery is obviously really liberating. In my case, it was because I was able to like kind of, okay, now I have something to address, you know? Whereas before, I was complicated or undisciplined, things like that, you know? And it's really easy. The analogy I was going to use is like when you're trying to clean and do your chores. Um, if I don't have like a task list, which now I have my little, methods and things, I'll end up cleaning the bathroom when I had to do the dishes. And a
Oh,
lot of the times I would treat my own kind of emotions in that same way because if anything ever got too overwhelming, it wasn't a matter of, you know, trying to minimize it, trying to rationalize through it. It was more so like drop it, leave it, and then come back when you've kind of gotten bored of the other thing. And when you treat your emotions like that, it's easy to stay high functioning in a really superficial way.
mm,
Um, it's also very easy to kind of slip and then not have that inner monologue or like those prompts to reflect almost because it's really easy to go through life and not reflect at all, like and to not really think deeply about things. I myself, like I always said I was an overthinker, but I think, a huge part of recovery is kind of overanalyzing and reanalyzing because in
mhm,
my case, it wasn't just that new language I was being exposed to, it was a new way to sit with myself, which
mm.
is rare.
I love what you're saying. I had to sit with myself, right?
Mhm.
Like I had to reflect and really be with myself, not just like in my head overthinking that way, but in this more, I hear it in this more conscious way. I had to really start being like more, I want to say almost honest with myself in some like in some way.
Yeah.
That's how I'm hearing it.
I
Right.
would say also making sure like that angle of honesty doesn't involve anybody else's narratives, because I think like there is a large part of ED and general, like I think for anyone outside, even just being a human, right? Like there's there are these constant demands to be self-aware in a very specific way, in a very palatable way. And I
Mm,
think like when you're sitting with something as overbearing and overwhelming like ED or anything else, it's you have to learn like how to sit with yourself. Like yeah, because I loved being alone before, but it wasn't productive. No, it wasn't like exploratory. It was
mhm,
definitely more of a comfort within,
mm,
self-harm realm that yeah, those things just like really take on a mind of their own.
mm. I'm also like another thing I'm thinking about that was really significant is some of your work with your nutritionist is really
Oh
like
yeah,
working
absolutely.
to get those basics down. And that was not what was going on in the beginning. And it was not like all of a sudden it just changed either. But that I think was a really significant part of your own self-care, right? Despite,
Yeah.
like you said, anybody else's narrative or what anybody else was doing around you with their relationship with food, it was like, how am I going to be honest with myself with what I need and stick to that? Kind of no matter what. Not like that happened all in a week, but
No, definitely
I'm
not.
wondering if
Yeah.
you could speak into kind of like where you started and like now what it's like, because I think that's really important for people to hear just a little bit about the process, not in,
Yeah.
yeah, but focus on more now, like what is working.
Yeah, totally. I mean, in terms of a before and after snapshot, I would say like Um, another analogy, I had insomnia from a really young age, and I ran on very, very little sleep for many years, honestly, throughout puberty and then a little after college. And I had convinced myself that it must have been different. I didn't need the, 8 hours. I was able to operate just fine. And obviously that wasn't true. But I think I approached food in the same light because it wasn't that I didn't have an understanding of all food is good food, but I didn't have an understanding of like a balanced meal and what that looked like. I did. It was more so that control of restriction. And I think my restriction mindset, like for so many years, the only thing I thought of was food, was my next meal, was what I wasn't going to have, what I shouldn't have, how
Mm,
many hours or days it had been since my last. And it was just like very numbers oriented in a way that obviously doesn't get you anywhere. No. And now the restriction mindset, it's like a little alarm, it's an early alarm system. It's an early warning system for me because the moment that I jump to like shouldn't, should, I can't, it's a very clear tell to like
mm,
what are you actually trying to control? Like
mhm,
what are you feeling out of sorts over? Or what like just it's a moment to pause. Yeah. I mean, I know that we always said power of the pause during and
mm,
obviously for somebody like myself that hates pausing and now I do it as like it's my daily measure, my practice almost.
mm. We even
Yeah.
did that before we started, didn't we,
That we
Alexa?
did.
We
Yeah.
both took a
No, for
few
sure.
moments to really like
Yeah.
ground ourselves, and we did the pause so we could show up and be present in this conversation and kind of make this up as we go. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm hearing how now some of these things are part of your life, right? Like the pausing, like when you said I went out and in my house and I just took a few paces and was, I think,
Yeah.
breathing
Yeah.
just to kind of like ground yourself with all the meetings that you're doing with this amazing startup. And with as busy as you are, I hearing you still work with kind of like what are those practices that carry me through the day? Like I do hear something like that, that you're really
Yeah.
committed to your own self-care now.
Yeah, I mean, I think also when you are like aware of how to recalibrate, not just emotionally, but your literal nervous system, it it doesn't become an enemy. It's like an alarm system, like where's your battery at right now? What is your level at right now?
Mm,
Um, it's a remarkable thing to have to pick up as a skill for sure.
mm. So now you pay attention to those things like my sleep, my energy,
Yes.
even like you said, you thought you were getting sick, but this isn't actual
This
sick.
is allergies and too many meetings, too
And
much
too many meetings, right? And still you chose to show up here.
well,
And
yeah.
because I know you are a big believer in sharing story, and if your story can make a difference, I know how important that is to you, Alexa. I mean,
Yeah, I
really.
mean, I
And
think I think anyone's story, if like the first step is definitely writing it and making sure that you have an understanding of all the different angles you can also take in those previous chapters. Because I think when you reflect, our memory like serves us,
mm,
but it doesn't necessarily serve what's good for us,
mm,
It'll serve us in that moment. So
mm.
I'm sorry, my throat is
Don't worry, don't worry. The other thing that I'll say is you're coughing a little, and another big thing that is on my mind because Dr. Ivana and I are, we're working on this book, but we've been writing a lot about this idea of related to recovery of patience and persistence.
yeah.
And I feel like, Alexa, you really embody both of those things. I really do. Like, you were somebody who would show up. You show up, you would show up, you would show up. I mean, even tonight, like you're like, I'm gonna show up. I know you've been back to back in meetings, and you're like, no, like
Well,
you
this
were,
one was the one I was looking most forward to. So.
oh, so, like, I'm wondering if you could just speak into like why this idea of persistence and patience, because recovery
Yeah,
is really not a straight line. Like, it's just not.
yeah. I mean, I think for me, it was a hard pill to swallow that I had to kind of treat myself like a little kid, It's not just reconnecting with your inner child, like to heal, to do that kind of healing work. you have to baby yourself. And my, methods of self-motivation prior were always out of like just one harmful rhetoric, but also a really kind of warped interpretation of what my value looked like as a person and that, the way that I valued myself, I didn't hold those expectations for other people. It was just myself. And it goes back to the control thing, and I think the concept of patience and persistence starts with understanding that I didn't have skills that I needed to recover when I started recovery, which is an obvious statement,
Mm,
but to somebody like me, which obviously, of course, is arrogant in just in thinking and in practice, like it's very frustrating, and not just fighting the certain like statements of facts which you have to eat regularly
mm,
to be healthy, to have like fueling your body, things like that.
yeah.
I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna get to a better place if I'm eating consistently or like every 4 hours. That's insane. Lo and behold, it's exactly what you have to do. And it was a lot of self like babying, if that makes sense. And I think the patience comes from there. And the persistence for me came from a place of like, okay, now I know that I don't have to live this way. And now I know
Mm,
that it's one, not useful, right? Because like I started recovery in the biggest body I had been in, right? But prior to that, I looked exactly how your stereotypical like categorization of somebody with ED looked.
mm,
And at no point in any of those, different shapes and sizes, was anybody else like concerned or wondering or asked. And I think like when I had met with Yvonne, Dr. Yvonne was the first person to kind of tell me like, hey, you have really weird thoughts about food and like you have really weird beliefs. And it took over a year to convince me to start FAB because I was so entrenched in this idea that I had to look a certain way to say that I was sick, realist. But I what like it had been 7, 8 years of a lot of just real mistreatment of myself. And I think
yeah.
that yeah, I think that that's like I said, the hard pill to swallow. So the patience and persistence really comes every step of the way, I would say, even from step one.
Mm,
Yeah, but it's also what gets you through. It's the fuel. Like you
mm,
need it.
yeah. I think my face is just like, like what would you tell somebody who was waiting? Like you said, there was like a lot of years
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, maybe people didn't know what was going on, like you were able to kind of hide it, right? And achieving and, looking, like you said, maybe people didn't, oh, like, is something going on for Alexa? Maybe they didn't know fully. And so it like took some time to finally like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like when you finally chose, I mean, I really feel like I'm not saying again, it just even when you choose, it's not like it always just easy. Like it still takes time to like learn these skills because they really are skills. But I'm wondering, Alexa, like for anybody who's listening, like what would be what would you want to say to them about like not waiting and getting started
Mhm.
on this journey? I know that might seem like an obvious question, but I think it's such
Oh,
an important one.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, even in my like it at my sickest, like physically, I had isolated myself for like 4 months so that nobody could see how bad things had gotten because it's strange because like you do it as a method of control, but then you're afraid if somebody notices like the pain, which
Mm,
is counterintuitive because it's a very obvious, it can be at least, and it also can't be, but I mean it's really case dependent, obviously. But I think I think honestly like the realization that like trying to love yourself is loving yourself. There's not like a point that you have to reach to then be certified to say like I know how to do self-care. No, I mean I still find different ways of different ways to self-soothe, to practice self-care. Like I hope to continue exploring and learning new ways, and I hope to grow through those ways. Because, like, one thing I will also say is that you can't put all of your eggs in one basket with recovery, right? Like, there are certain points where you have to like trust and be mechanical. A
Mm,
lot of my current like a lot of my current toolkit is that, right? Like how can I be mechanical so that I can make sure that my mind, my
mm,
emotions aren't dictating what my body deserves? Because realistically, like our bodies deserve all of it to be fed, to be cared for. They're what bring us through this life. Like you're gonna be with it the rest of your life.
mm,
Um, so I would say like that development of patience and persistence and self-love, like just in trying to start and in trying to learn about it and being brave enough to consider like, okay, I could fail at these things. Like that doesn't really exist once you actually start practicing it. But I
mm,
was always very afraid of like doing it wrong and about not even, also it's a little darker, but like to not want to not care to want, I think that that's something that you also find when you start asking like, okay, what actually do I need? Like what would be self-soothing? How could I show myself love? You
mm.
know? Um,
Probably at different points along the journey, it looks different. Like you're at such a different
totally.
point now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And in some ways you're also at a stressful point because you're doing this beautiful startup that matters so much to you. And, I feel like we saw you through so many big
Yeah,
things
like three
in your
different cities, I think.
life. Three different cities, a
Yeah.
graduate program. I mean, like you
Yeah.
accomplished big big things. And if I guess this would be my final question, even though I know you and I can talk for hours, like we really could.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you think have been some of the biggest gifts of, like putting yourself through this process? And like you said, which I think is beautiful, like the learning, the self-care, the learning new ways, like it never stops.
Yeah.
Um, but you are at a different place to be fully alive in your life. And I just wonder if you could share with maybe somebody who's here, like listening, saying, "Oh, can I really do this?" Because
Yeah.
it's like easy to doubt, especially if you've been struggling for a long time. Like, can I really do this? And is it possible for me? So, like, I'm wondering if you could share about like what are the gifts of
Yeah.
going through all of this to, I don't want to say to come out the other side because it's not exactly like that, right? It's like to me, it's like you're always climbing the mountain. You climb a mountain, you're like, oh, there's all these other mountain ranges.
Yeah.
Keep climbing, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, what are some of those have been those gifts for you, Alexa?
I I would say that, it's very easy to look at being a healthy person as like this agenda with all these different tabs and like checklists and of course, you have to be mindful of the physical. The physical is what can kind of not just fuel the mental and emotional, but it's what connects everything. It's
Mm,
the vessel for all of that. And
mm,
I think my concept of health today is so much more encompassing than it accounts for my past self, my present, and future self. And like,
mm,
it's not that I'm happy. I am way happier now, obviously, and I'm much more functional now. And I have like um, that curiosity reinvigorated, I would say. Like for curiosity for life, curiosity to know me, those are things that like you can lose if you neglect yourself enough. And like for me, I had lost it completely. And then of course I meet with the FAB team and they're like, it's not lost, it's just really deep, deep down. And I think that once you choose yourself once, it's the practice of understanding how to do it without betraying who you are, your loved ones, things like that. Like I was always very concerned about the burden of recovery on my loved ones and, in a very productive way. Like they weren't actually that involved. And I think it led me to pick myself in a way that I never had. And it also has expanded the way I can love. Because if I can love myself, and I was already giving so much love to other people, imagine how much more I can give now.
mm,
And I think like that's how you find yourself, right? Because like you can do a lot of work on your own, like you should realistically.
Mhm.
But that last 10% is in the world and being in the world. And like it's a beautiful thing, and it's not about being happy. It's about like being at peace with yourself and like understanding that you're enough because you exist, not because you have to like adhere to some arbitrary like list of rules and I don't know, whatever I had invented in my mind a few years back. So I
Mm,
would say that. Slow and steady.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Alexa, thank you. I love how you put words together. Like that was to
A
me,
little at the end of the day, a little
it
puzzled.
was like poetry. It was so poetic. And I love this idea of being a vessel. Like this is a vessel and it holds it all. Like
Yeah.
even our future self. I thought that was such a cool way to put it. And then just I feel like I'm leaving on this like this self-love. I feel like
Yeah.
that's the note that you left us to ponder. And I can also see having you come back and also talk about this idea of loved ones, how they can support.
Yeah.
Because, right, it's like sometimes they don't know what to do
Yeah, I don't know that at
and
all. Yeah.
what to say, or sometimes
Yeah.
it's like trying to coach them of what not to say or do. So
Yeah.
that might be another one that I think you'd have a lot
Happy
to
to.
say.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
okay, Alexa,
Awesome.
thank
Well,
you.
thank you guys, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Jen. This was always super fun. And we'll chat soon.
Sounds good. Okay.
Bye.